Joining us now is Congressman Michael Waltz. He's a Republican from Florida. He's also an Army veteran, decorated Green Beret, who's been very vocal on the president's decision to withdraw forces from the border of Syria. Congressman Waltz, we appreciate you taking the time this morning.
Thanks, Jim.
Let's begin with Syria, because you've been very vocal, and you were someone who served on the ground there. You know the role that Kurdish forces there, the central role, played in fighting back ISIS in Syria. In the simplest terms, has the president, with this decision, abandoned American allies on the ground?
Well, they certainly feel abandoned, and you know what is so disturbing, so heartbreaking, and I'm talking to Green Berets who are out there working with them now, is we assured them that we would protect them from a Turkish incursion. We helped them dismantle their defenses with that security guarantee, and now they're turning around and being attacked. And keep in mind, they are the prison guards for tens of thousands of ISIS fighters. And they are no longer guarding those ISIS prisoners. They're defending themselves against the Turks. Meanwhile, the leader of ISIS, al-Baghdadi, who is still alive, has been calling on his guerrilla fighters to attack those same prisons so that ISIS can resurge again. Yep. And, you know, after all of this blood, sweat, and tears, which the administration, I think, deserves credit for taking off the handcuffs that was on the military under Obama and unleashing them to defeat ISIS. ISIS is defeated as a caliphate, but not as a movement. They can and fully intend to come back again, and that's why you're hearing so many of us speak up and speak out, because ISIS can attack Europe and they can inspire attacks in the United States. Jim, just very quickly, you know, my district touches on Orlando with the Pulse nightclub shooting, which was an ISIS-inspired fighter. We have to stay on offense. We have to keep our foot on the neck, whether that's Afghanistan, Syria, or other places. Otherwise, this problem will follow us home.
I went and I covered that attack in Orlando, and it was a horrific one. What do you think then when you hear the president say, well, those ISIS fighters, they'll go home to Europe, where American allies are? Is that the way a U.S. president should talk about ISIS terrorists?
I understand, and a lot of people's frustration with how long these wars have taken, too hard, too long, too expensive. How does this end? Is this an endless war? But one of the things that we have to help people understand, we're not talking tens of thousands of troops here. We're talking a few hundred that are actually preventing this conflict and preventing future wars. Look, if the strategic goal of Rand Paul and other isolationists, and they are in both sides and both parties, is to bring a few hundred troops home, then we have 50,000 in Japan since World War II, 30,000 in South Korea still. We still have a battalion in the Sinai. So if we want to bring a few hundred troops home, there's a lot less dangerous places to do that than the heart of where ISIS is. And we can't repeat the mistakes that President Obama made of pulling out of Iraq too soon. That's what led to al-Qaeda resurging and turning into ISIS in the first place.
Let me ask you another question, and this is on U.S. elections and foreign help. You've seen the president's phone call with the Ukrainian president. You've seen the president even on the White House lawn say, hey, China, investigate Joe Biden. In the simplest terms, should a U.S. president of any party ask or seek the help of a foreign country in a U.S. election?
Well, look, I am not comfortable. If there is a clear-cut quid pro quo, then yeah, that makes me very uncomfortable, and we should take a hard look at that. But Jim, that's not how I read this transcript, and I think a lot of people are projecting, you know, what happened there. I think you would also call.
You saw the language,
I think you would also call for a clear-cut. I think you would also call for a clear-cut vote. Let's take a vote. If it's so clear-cut and that's what people believed happened, then I hope you would also call on my Democratic colleagues to take a vote, up or down. If this is impeachable, if this is a high crime and misdemeanor, treason or bribery, and it's so clear-cut in their mind, then take a vote. But I don't think it's that clear. I don't like asking China, who is an adversary. Let me be clear there. But I do think you could interpret that, and I do, as looking into corruption and looking backwards at 2016 at the CrowdStrike server.
So let me ask you this, because you're a soldier, a veteran, on what happened with Ukraine. Because the military aid to Ukraine, which is currently under invasion by Russia, fighting a war that's killed 13,000 Ukrainians over the last 5 years. They depend on that aid. The aid was halted before that phone call. And by the way, you're familiar with the Wall Street Journal's reporting. The White House had to move control of that aid to a political appointee because the career lawyers noted that it would be legally problematic to withhold that aid, which was authorized by an act of Congress. Do you view that? Let me ask you, because you say, if we're abandoning allies in Syria, do you view that as abandoning America's ally in Ukraine for political purposes?
This administration, Jim, unlike the Obama administration, has sold lethal aid to the Ukrainians with a javelin sale last year and this year. But I mean, be fair in your reporting. Be fair in your reporting. The president has had questions about aid around the world, Northern Triangle countries, Afghanistan. He has repeatedly asked political officials around the world on, is this being used effectively? Is it in U.S. interest? And is corruption involved in abusing this aid? He has been clear on that since day one, and he's been clear on questions.
You accept that explanation?
I do accept. Yeah, I do accept that explanation.
Even as the aid was
and
withdrawn.
Political appointees are in charge of aid throughout the State Department and the Defense Department. I don't even see why that's an issue you're asking about.
Well, it's an issue because they asked the career lawyers. And the career lawyers, as well as career diplomats, Marie Yovanovitch, who's testifying today, Bill Taylor, a longtime veteran of the diplomatic corps, they saw a direct connection there. Do you think they were mistaken to see that connection?
Wouldn't you like to see the transcript of that testimony? I would. I'd like to see Kurt Volker's testimony. I'd like to see the Inspector General of the intelligence community's testimony. But instead, I, as a member of Congress, can't even see it. But I'm talking. They say it runs completely counter to Adam Schiff's narrative, who's going right to the cameras right after these hearings, but sitting on, I mean, shouldn't for an impeachment hearing, this is a big deal. We should have a vote and we should have transparency. And when I talk to Floridians, I've just been in my district for the last few weeks, they're demanding the same thing. They're fed up with investigations and they're asking what happened to health care, transportation, infrastructure.
Although you do know this administration at first blocked some of this testimony. So if we're looking for transparency, I think we can both agree we want it across the board.
Well, I think we should follow the historic precedent of Clinton and Nixon, and let's have an up or down vote. And I hope you're asking that tough question as well.
We ask it, as my colleague Poppy did, of a sitting Democrat just moments ago. Congressman Michael Waltz, we do appreciate you coming on the program, and you're welcome anytime.